Universal grammar and second language learning. Now, universal grammar is focused on the learning or acquisition of the first language. What implication does it have for the learning of the second language? So, the theoretical relevance of universal grammar to the second language learning is there, however, it might be indirect. So, if universal grammar says or asserts that it is all about a natural language learning, it describes what a natural language is and how it is learnt by children. Second language also, or any language also, is a natural language, although at the stage at which it is learnt is different. So that means that the principles that they are talking about should also apply to the second language learning. Plus, there are also some similarities in the first and second language learning. For instance, we say that in the first language learning, the learners pass through fairly rigid stages. In the second language learning also, if you would remember, we asserted through evidence from research that the learners pass through some rigid stages and they can't possibly skip those stages. They can pass through those stages at a faster or a slower pace, but all of them have to pass through the same stages. Then, if you would remember this concept of interlanguage by Corder and Selinka, you would remember that we said that the initial language used by the second language learner is different from the language of the native speakers, and it is also rule governed, but those rules are the ones that the learners themselves have disentangled or disengaged from the input they come across. A similar claim, if we would say over here, is also made by the universal grammar researchers regarding the first language. So the problem that the first language learners face, for instance, related to this fragmentary input of the first language, from which they have to learn the whole of the first language, is also the same issue that is faced by the second language learners. They are exposed to a set number of items, and yet they are able, on the basis of those set number of structures, to construct a language or to use a language in their own way. However, there are differences between the learning of the first language and the learning of the second language. We said those who are learning the second language are more cognitively mature, whether even if it is a child, the child has already acquired at least to some extent the first language before embarking on the second language. And there are researchers, let me also sort of take a little deviation and say that researchers also say that it is important for a child to learn the features of the first language to a fairly high degree of expertise before a second language is introduced. Nevertheless, it is contested, of course, and that is why we're constantly thinking whether to introduce language in class 1 in our schools or class 6. In any case, this is an important issue. So we also say that the first language learners, in any case, they know a language, no matter what to what degree, while when they are learning their first language, that is not there. They also have, in second language learning, they might also have different motivations to learn a language, and they might also be advanced in age. So there must be some important implications that we need to draw, but these implications will be indirect. They will be indirect because there are some key differences between the learning of the first language and the learning of the second language. And this, of course, logically brings us to this possibility regarding universal grammar's role in the learning of the second language. If universal grammar means that every human being or every child has an access to a certain universal grammar in their brains, the question is that how does it apply to the second language learning? So there could be two possibilities, like we discussed. There could be this possibility of having full access to universal grammar principles, or having only partial access in the learning of the second language. And the answers that we come up with, or the discussion that we come up with, depending on which perspective we agree with, will also have an implication on the proficiency of the second language learned by the second language learners.